Welcome to In the Fire, a podcast for the young families of Chapelgate Presbyterian Church. Marriage and parenting are a wonderful blessing and are extremely rewarding, but they're also really hard and can leave us feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and defeated. That's exactly why we started this podcast, to help families see how the gospel injects encouragement, comfort, and hope into the daily grind of our lives, and to remind you that you're never alone in the struggle. There is another In the Fire.
Hello and welcome back to In the Fire. My name is Rob Gicking. I'm the pastor of young families at Chapelgate, and I am coming to you today from outside my office, which is very exciting. I'm in Potomac, Maryland, hon. And it's just a suburb outside of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America. I feel good. So I'm joined today by some local residents of Potomac, Maryland, who I've never met before. And their names are Kato and Doug. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
That is correct, Rob.
Okay. Thanks for remembering my name. So, Doug and Kato, I have you here because I have a few questions for you. But before I do that, it might be helpful for people to understand the context that you so misfortunately came into knowing me. So, Doug, why don't you tell people how you met Rob?
So we met Rob Gicking, the famous pastor and podcast host, at our home. Actually, Rob worked as a summer staffer at our church, Fourth Presbyterian Church in Bethesda, Maryland. And he worked, I think it was 2013. Is that right, Rob?
That's right, 2013.
Summer of 2013.
Summer I'll never forget.
Yeah. And so that was it. And I just have to tell the quick story that the first day he was here, he almost tried to tackle a deer in our backyard because he was so excited that there was wildlife in Potomac.
Yeah, I thought it was only city people here, to be honest with you. I thought everybody who lived in D.C. was like a yuppie, you know? And then I learned that there were trees and grass and nice things out here as well.
Well, the deer are actually yuppie deer.
They are yuppie deer. That deer was like, I'm not afraid of you. I see people every day, more handsome and more intelligent.
True.
So Kato, do you agree with the facts as stated by your husband?
Yes, but he forgot the most important fact is that you lived with us.
I did. I lived in your basement.
You did.
That's right.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That's the best basement I've ever lived in. You should know that.
And you taught our son Ben to love crab.
Oh, yes.
And we made crab cakes.
That's true. It's an important part of being a Marylander. If you're out of state and you don't understand, read Lamentations. Your life is horrible. Because Maryland and crabs are some of the best things that God ever blessed humanity with. And if you need to come to Maryland, I would be happy for you to pay for us to go out together to get some crabs. And that's my word. I'm sticking to it.
I'm convinced the crabs are a very, very interesting one of God's creation and they're put in Maryland because Maryland is the most interesting shaped state in the Union.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. Also, since we're on the topic, have you ever wondered who the first person was that looked at that creature and said, you know what? I bet we can eat that.
It probably was not SpongeBob. But
no, it was someone who was like on the verge of death, for sure. Nobody ever looks at a crab and says, what a beautiful, handsome, tasty-looking creature. I would love to sink my teeth into that.
It probably pinched
it definitely
and they
pinched
decided
them.
to burn it.
Oh, they threw it in the fire out of anger.
Yep.
And
Okay.
they said, ooh, this is sweet.
Yes. A grilled crab. I don't know. It's for you to decide, listening audience. Is that theory
Behind
correct
every
or not?
hard shell is sweet meat.
That's right. Thank you, Kato. Well, listen, guys, I'm very excited to have you on this episode of In the Fire. This is a podcast for young families of Chapelgate, but you guys are no longer a young family. You have graduated, but you're not an old family. You're just a family. So before we begin, it's time for a hard-hitting question. Kato, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Let
Doug?
her go first.
Okay. What a gentleman. I'm sure that's not a delaying tactic at all. Kato, in the world that you now live in are three animals. You can keep one as a pet. You can farm one for food. And the third must be a beast of burden to accomplish your life's mission. The animals that you have are squirrel, emu, and snakes.
Oh.
You have to eat one. You have to, what was it? I forgot my own hard-hitting question. You got to eat one of them. I know that. One's there to like do your bidding. And the third one's a pet. Yeah.
Pet.
So pet, farmed for food, or useful for carrying things.
Okay. So I know that you can eat snake because I saw people eating snake once a long time ago.
Like on the Discovery Channel?
And I hate the snake. So I will eat the snake. Doug ate snake in China. I was
Wow.
pregnant with Ben, so I did not eat the snake because I thought it would hurt the baby.
Good move.
And we were just in Central Park in New York City, and a man had a squirrel on his shoulder, and he was feeding him nuts. So I think I'll take the squirrel to be my pet, the snake to be my food, and the emu to do my work.
I think that's smart. I could really see the emu being helpful, like as a sled dog transplant. Like mush, and then the emu just pulls
I don't
you.
even think I know what an emu looks like.
It's like a bizarre ostrich. An ostrich is already bizarre.
Did you say emu was a pet?
No, squirrel.
Okay. So
No, emu's the beast of
So
burden.
I would say the emu is definitely a pet because it's the cutest of the
You
three.
think an emu is cute?
I don't think you know what an emu looks like.
I don't think you know what
probably
cute
don't.
means.
I probably think it's like a llama. It's not.
It is not. It's a bird. It's like a
Didn't the
dinosaur bird.
Teletubbies have a song about the emu?
I don't know.
There's some emu song.
Oh yeah, VeggieTales did have emu in it. Yeah.
Anyway, I'll still take the emu as a pet, and I would say the snake is definitely the beast of burden.
Yep.
Because
How you pulling that off?
it's Satan. I mean, like it's on the ground. It is a snake. I want.
You want Satan working for you?
I'm
I
just
want him
thinking-
dead.
I don't want him Lord of my life. That's for sure. So I
Yes,
want him working
okay.
for me and I want to be able to crush him if I have to.
It's a good theological argument. Very reformed of you. Thank you.
And squirrel was the last one. Was that to eat?
Ooh.
Yeah, I guess you're eating
I
squirrel.
heard squirrel meat is greasy.
Oh, okay, well.
Yeah, but squirrel pot pie is not bad.
Oh, have you had that?
Of course.
Carroll County.
Carroll County.
Yeah. Squirrels are really efficient and good workers, though, too. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't know if you can train any. The only one that you could train would be the emu.
No, you could train a squirrel.
You can't
I
train
think
a
Rob's
squirrel.
on my side.
Haven't you seen the guy from NASA those YouTube things where he actually trained him to do a
Oh, you're
course?
right. Yeah. To see if he could eventually figure out how to keep him off the bird feeder.
Yes.
And they always beat the obstacle
Yes, young
course.
families watch that with your kids. They're actually great.
Yeah, there's 20 minutes of your life that you'll never get back, but it is worth it.
It is totally worth it.
Well, guys, now that the hard-hitting question's out of the way, it only gets easier from here. So, you guys have played a really significant role in my life and in Kate's life. We're very grateful for you and the way that you've loved us and exemplified what it looks like to be married and to raise kids. When I lived here with you, we were not married. We did not have kids. And I got to kind of watch firsthand, what does it look like to be, in a godly marriage, to be a godly husband? What does it look like to raise 4 sons, which, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned that, but 4 sons. Are you kidding me? Kato, you're a superhero. And so wanted to just kind of get you on here to just talk through a little bit of your story. Obviously, when you were in the middle of some of these things that you're going to talk about, it probably didn't feel as good as it does now looking back, but it's sometimes helpful, I think, for me as a younger guy and for our young families to just hear what a journey it is. So why don't you start with here? How did you all meet? And then, let's start there.
So first of all, I'm just happy that after living with us, you actually decided to have a family. That was very,
Yeah.
that was really great of you. So I was proud of that. So we met actually in first day of high school at a square dance. It was an orientation. We met the first day, and I saw her in this dress and big smile and big blue eyes, and said, she's the one for me. And about a year and a half later, she decided to agree with me.
There you go.
And we started dating then, and we got married post-college. It's a long story in between there. We were about 25 years old, and then we started, and then we moved to DC after I went to business school when we were 28, and had our first boy Jack right then, right when we got here, about 1 year in, and then I'll let you go.
1 year in of marriage?
1 year into living in DC.
Yeah, we got married in 93 and we had Jack in 96.
96.
Nice.
So and then why don't you talk about? Why don't you go from there?
Well,
Join the church.
wait, he didn't ask that.
Oh, did you join a church?
We did. So,
Well, I was just moving ahead. I was just trying to accelerate. Sorry.
so Doug and I met. The high school was a boarding school. I grew up in Indiana. He grew up in Connecticut. We did not grow up in Bible believing, born again Christian homes. We grew up in homes that went to church. So we were both exposed to Christianity, but we did not have a saving faith.
Correct.
And I thought there were two different kinds of Christian. So I thought there were those who believed in Jesus and the Bible, and then there were the normal people.
Yeah.
So we were equally yoked spiritually. Like we thought there was a God.
Meaning we were not believers.
But we were not believers. So,
Right.
We were not.
And then through marriage, and Doug's mom is a believer, but she became a Christian when he was late high school. Mm-hmm. I lost what I wanted to say. We went to this engagement workshop when we were engaged.
Oh, okay. Like a premarital thing.
And we heard at that workshop about the triangle where you have a relationship with each other, but your primary relationship is with God. And we both were very honest in that we did not have a relationship with God, but it was maybe interesting to us.
And we thought it was crazy to have a relationship with God be over a relationship with each other.
Right.
Yes.
We thought that was nuts.
So my primary relationship was Doug. Yeah. And I thought maybe I'd be interested in God. Yeah. So that's how we began marriage. Poor Doug.
Poor us. I don't know.
So he was my idol.
So we began marriage and just trying to figure it out, not having any sort of role models.
But we had a very Christian marriage.
But we had both of the wedding. You're saying, yeah.
When you watch our wedding video, it was so Christ-centered.
And we had really
Bible-centered.
strong families growing up. Both our dads died young, so we had a lot of pain, I would say. And then I think when our son was born, he was born with actually short fingers on one hand, which, like, I was an athlete in college and still am, and it crushed me. And so we actually were just, what is this life about? Why do things like this happen? Why are our dads not here? Why does my son have short fingers on his hand? And through that, we actually started, and maybe parallel with that, we were looking for a church just to get him baptized. And so we went to a bunch of churches. We lived in Northern Virginia at the time. A bunch of churches, and didn't like them or whatever, and went to Fourth and heard a beautiful sermon from the youth pastor at the time on Psalm 40, and which was kind of a funny story. But through that, we said, hey, and we loved the music and the life of the young adults and the youth there, and said, we want to join this place. I had no idea what the church was. And in the new members class, we heard the gospel, and we were like, whoa, this is what my mom believes. They believe the whole Bible. Like Kato said one time. Go ahead.
Well, in the new members class, you start we're so off what you asked us. Anyway, in the new members class, they really explain who they are, what they believe, and why church is important. And I said to Doug, this is one of those born-again Christian churches where they think the whole Bible's true, like Noah and Jonah. We're not going to this church. Like, I don't want to go to this church. And Doug said, I think they're smart, they're thoughtful, and we should stay and explore.
And learn. Yeah. And through that new members class, we both came to faith, praise God, within like 3 weeks of each other. And that started our journey.
Oh, my goodness.
In the Christian faith. And so that was in
96.
96, yeah. So it's almost 30 years ago, like 28 years ago. And guess what? Our oldest son is 28.
Yeah.
The math worked.
Yeah, we were born again when we became parents.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're flying. Talk about the fire.
Yeah.
We don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an interesting story, because oftentimes we think about Christian marriages starting, right, with two individual Christians coming together. But in your case, sort of saying, I'm aware of God. I have an awareness of the Bible. It's not maybe making a huge lot of difference in my life. And actually together, I mean, that's so rare, to come to that. So, okay, so now we're in 1996 and Jack is born. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So let's pick up there. What were the next 10 years like for you all?
Baby, 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 baby.
Yeah, it was basically baby, and when she stopped breastfeeding, pregnant again, baby, boom, boom.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah, that was every 20 to 22 months. We
Oh,
had
my goodness.
We had another kid, and it was basically a joke because it was a boy, a boy, a boy. She's got 2 older brothers. I have 2 older brothers. I don't know many women in my life, honestly. I know my mom, my wife, and my mother-in-law, and now I have maybe 4 daughter-in-laws, which is really cool, but I digress. So I would say those 10 years was an absolute tunnel.
Okay, what do you mean?
Diapers, no sleep, sippy cups.
Yeah.
Insanity.
And I think importantly, we had zero context of what it meant to raise a Christian family. Like, as head of the household, no context, nobody in my life that I could say, oh, I want to model myself after him or them or anything like that. I had nothing.
Okay, but time out. Because our next door neighbors who invited us to church were Southern, and halfway, like a year and a half in, so we only have Jack, and we're just learning about Jesus. And you came home one night and you're like, I am not Ken and you are not Caroline, and stop trying to make me like him.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what a Christian, he was the only Christian man I knew. And so I thought that's what a Christian was. And I'm looking around our church trying to figure out what are we supposed to be, because we're like, what doesn't look like the other? We don't look like anybody here. So that was really, I'm so thankful that Doug refuses to be controlled and is his own man and always has been. And that you lead our family and you are you, and you're not going to pretend to be anything other than who you are, which was a real gift.
That's very
That's
sweet.
such
was
a
nice,
gift.
huh? How about
My
that?
gosh, I love that.
Man, I should come over and record podcasts more often.
But
I
I would say, with not having any model in front of us, we were searching for it. So I found a mentor early on. You found plenty of women mentors, and we were looking at other families, and so we were trying to model ourselves. But in the end, those are helpful, maybe, but they do things very differently, and we're different people, and we have a very different background than everyone's got a different background, and so it's we've read every James Dobson book you can imagine. They're all over there. We've got like dozens and dozens of parenting books of how to, and I was in Bible studies where we're doing shepherding a child's heart, and we were trying to, so we were struggling and effectively winging it. I would say
Right.
we were winging it, or at least it definitely felt like we were winging it. I would just say for the guys out there, or the workers out there, I should say, one of the hardest things was actually trying to fit my Christian life into my life prior to Christ. So I'm on a career path where I am working my tail off. I'm trying to keep in shape and continue to play sports. I'm trying to keep in touch with friends. That was good luck with that. That was really hard in these years. I was trying to have a devotional time. I was trying to lead my family in devotions, and I use the word trying really. I mean, and so I just felt stretched to the max. I just felt like I had no ability to sort of I worked a whole time. Kato's at home with the kids. I get home. She's looking for a break. I'm exhausted, and I got to be there for the boys. And it was just a time of exhaustion in very, very different fashions for you too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those. I'm hearing you, and tell people what you do for a living real quick, because I think that's important.
Yeah, so I work in the private equity industry, which basically means we invest in small companies and help them grow. So it's
demanding.
It's a very demanding job, and I was in a firm where it was really important to be grinding hard, and so it was trying to balance that with Bible study, with staying in shape, with being a good husband, going to church, whatever. It was just there was not enough hours of the day.
It can feel so overwhelming. I think a couple of the things you all have said already have just really hit home for me, and I think have probably hit home for the young families listening, is that feeling of being over beyond capacity, but there's no relief in sight. You're beyond capacity as you come home from work. You're beyond capacity as he comes home from work. Both of you need a break. Neither of you's about to get one. And it's like, it's just that feeling of like, oh my goodness, like how long can this go on? But you made it.
We did.
Oh yeah.
We love to watch home movies. And over Christmas, Peter, our son, who's 24, and he has his first job out of college, and he doesn't really like work. And he goes, you have to go every day to work. And he's watching this video. It's somebody's birthday. It's complete chaos. People don't have shirts on. It's just chaos. And Doug is sitting there with his work suit on, and people are climbing on him. And Peter said, "How did you do that?
Right.
That's insane." And one thing I will have to say is my mother was a stay-at-home mom. It's all I ever wanted to be was a wife and a mother. I grew up in the Midwest. That was still a role model.
Oh, yeah.
And so we did it the old-fashioned way where even though it was tiring and exhausting, I wasn't yearning to be working. And I had no idea how hard the work at home was. And I would call my mom. I'm like, "This is awful. It's so boring." And she's like, "Sit on the floor and build the tower. That is your work. Like, read the book." My mom made everything look fun, and I like fun. And so when raising children wasn't fun, and it was exhausting and tiring and messy, and I thought, what did I build? What have I done to myself?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was going to be all dreamy and wonderful, and it's so hard.
I think that moment is so tangible. That moment of is my life over? Will I ever be Kato again? Or am I only going to be mommy for the rest of my life? Oh my goodness.
That moment hit early when Michael, our youngest, was born, and he was crying, and we were exhausted, and we had, 3 other toddlers that were chaotic and trying to kill each other at a regular basis. And Kato looked over at me and said, "I think we've committed sleep suicide."
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. And I think we're painting a hard, but just to try to maybe identify with your listeners here. But I also will say we had a blast. We had a ton of fun. We are a lot about fun, and we had
Wednesday night wrestling.
We had all sorts of really, really beautiful times, but it took real sacrifice. It took sacrifice of work. It took sacrifice of I didn't play a bunch of sports all the.
Yeah.
I had to put stuff on hiatus. I couldn't see friends or communicate with them very, very often. It was very much okay, I got to prioritize what I'm doing and know that it's a season. It is absolutely a season, which is maybe the most important point we've made thus far, because we're sitting here alive, and we are we're 20 years later, and
we still love each other.
So we're super happy. We're more in love than ever, and our boys are thriving. Maybe not even because of us, but maybe especially not because of us. And we can go into that, but our boys knew that they were loved, and we had a few things that we were sort of non-negotiables, which we can talk about, that were really, I think, fundamental to that. I think gave us a better chance to get through. But it is a season, and they become 9, 10, 12-year-olds really quickly, and that's a beautiful time. You probably heard that. And then they become teenagers, and they push away quick, and then they come back. But it all happens in looking back on it. It's a total cliche, but it happens so quickly.
But not the early years. What you're in right now is the longest 24 hours on the planet.
Yeah. If there were actually longer 24 hours than others, this is
it.
This is it.
So Kato, when did you feel like that shift occurred, where it went from I'm just exasperated every single day to hey, this is starting to be fun again?
When Michael went to kindergarten.
When they can put their pants on.
I've heard that. I've heard that between 5 and 7 is when most parents start to feel a sense of relief, if you will. I mean, it's not that you're done parenting by any stretch, but they say that when your kid can start to put their own pants on, brush their own teeth, kind of be a little bit more autonomous, you do start to breathe again.
Yes.
One of the stages, honestly, I remember really distinctly was the last pack of diapers that we bought. We had 10 years. That was the tunnel. We had a 10-year tunnel of diapers, or maybe 8 years. I don't know what it was. 8 years. But when Michael was potty trained and we put the diapers away, it was like, whew.
Kato, did you cry?
What?
Did you cry?
I know. I don't even remember.
I remember that so well.
She was so
'Cause
sleep
he had to
deprived.
buy the diapers.
No, it wasn't about buying the diapers. It was just like, oh my gosh, like just it's kind of gross. It's kind of gross. Like when you look back.
No, the
Oh,
only time
yeah.
diapers were the gross was when the second baby. Do you remember changing the diaper of the? So Jack is 13 months old and Ben is an infant.
He's 20 months. Yeah, 20 months old.
Oh, how old was he?
20.
Oh, 20 months. Changing his diaper after the infant diaper was
Fleshy,
the gross
stinky poop.
was the
Yeah,
grossest
yeah.
thing I'd ever done him. But up until that point, that was normal.
Yeah, you
But
didn't.
then you noticed.
You're like, wow, this is real poop. You know, this is like little human poop, not just baby poop. Yeah. Okay. So,
But one of the best pieces of advice we ever got.
all right.
This is not Christian advice. This is just like straight parenting advice. Was everything's a season. The good times are
Stage. Everything's
Sorry,
a stage.
everything's a stage. Yeah. So the bad times, they're not going to last forever, and they're going to change. And the good times, they're not going to last forever, and they're going to change. And it just change is the norm, not stability, which is why it's so tiring. I think is because it's you think something's working, and then everything changes, and you have to kind of rework and think, how do I solve this next problem?
Right. So you mentioned earlier some of the non-negotiables. What were those, and sort of how did you come to that conclusion?
I'm so curious.
Well, I think I would say we came to them in retrospect. We look back and say these were things that we did that we were, I think, consistent. And I can say really quickly, we were not consistent
On anything.
on most everything. We were not consistent, particularly like devotions and Bible studies and catechizing our kids, which we tried all of that stuff and got through, like the first chapter of, 50.
Okay, but what were the non-negotiables? I'm dying to know.
Okay, well, one is going to church.
Oh yeah.
Going
yeah,
to
yeah,
church.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So see, there you go. Yeah. That was that was like, hey, we're gonna show up and go to church, and we would, we trained our kids to go, so I could go to Sunday school, and as hard as that was, it was actually a break for us. We could actually go to adult Sunday school with other young people and connect and create community, and then we could go to worship and worship God. And that as the kids grew, and I mean, it was hard sometimes. They were, diving under the pew a bunch, and they were coloring and screaming or whatever. And we didn't have, kids church later on, and until they got to like 5th grade and they started going to Sunday school. So there was sort of these gaps of times when they were at church. Early on, they were kind of in toddler and young kid daycare. But that was, I think, really important and number one. And that's maybe.
But that was for us.
But it was important for them, I think, too.
But I think because we were such brand new believers, it wasn't even. We didn't even discuss it. So when you say it was a non-negotiable, it just happened, and that was more important than our children. Worship for us and being in Sunday school for us we put that ahead of them always. We were not child-centered in that way because we were starving to know God.
Yeah, we were. It was all new.
We needed
every
to
book
be
in the Bible
there.
was new for us. Everyone.
Yeah.
So
We needed to be in worship and we needed to be in Sunday school, and so they had to come with us. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it wasn't about them; it was about us surviving.
I wonder
in Christ.
if that's not a, looking back at that, if that wasn't a huge blessing to sort of say
massive.
we to acknowledge I need this so badly that I'm gonna put the kids in the
Where
nursery.
if you've grown up in it your whole life, you probably are gonna think your children's needs come before your spiritual, because you might not be spiritually needy. We were infants in Christ, trying to be parents.
Yeah.
But I would push back on what you just said and say, I think as a young parent, you're maybe the most spiritually needy. It's one of the
Oh,
more.
right, but you might not think you
Right,
are.
but it's one of the more
perception.
spiritually needy times in your life, and so making sure you are going to that Bible or accountability group, you are connecting with other young moms or young dads or young couples, you are having the date night away, once a month, twice a month, whatever. And we didn't do it that often, but we did it every once in a while.
Kato's face betrays you.
No, I know. I'm just saying that, but we did that every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Well,
We
it
didn't do
is.
it well. I'm not saying we did that
But
consistently.
here's what I'm taking away from this, though, and I think this is really it's convicting even for me, which is it's so easy to sort of fall into the mental trap that I don't have time, I don't have energy, I can't possibly add another thing to my life or my schedule, and sort of to say, actually, invert that. Do you really think you have a chance of survival
You don't.
without adding
Right.
this?
Right, like God created its cycle, right? Every Sabbath is important. Now, we weren't calling it Sabbath, but we were practicing resting in God once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. That's the one thing that we're still doing. That's the most bedrock consistent thing in both of our lives.
And this is while having kids. So what does that look like? What did that look like for you guys to even take a quote unquote rest with four boys? And
It didn't feel restful.
it didn't feel right. Yeah, but and just for context here, I'm the oldest of four boys, and we grew up wild. The Gilbert boys were wild.
Yes. Yes.
That is some high octane, pure like boyhood, and that's partly why I loved living here that summer. I was like, yeah, these guys can keep up. It was one activity to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and right when you thought it was time to rest, we're halfway there. And so, but what did it look like, sort of, to say I'm taking a rest on a Sabbath?
But
day?
I don't think we didn't know that. We didn't even know that's what it was. So we weren't we weren't going in it thinking it's restful. We were going in like famished for God's word.
Famished for God's
we were
word.
tired and weary.
Yes.
And also, this is what we have to do as
And we
Christians.
loved it.
I mean,
We
it was-
actually loved it.
We did,
also.
but it was, trying to get our boys to church. You remember that? Remember how hard it was to actually get them into the car?
just to get them dressed and in the car.
We showed up for 9:30 church at 9:45 or 10 regularly, and it didn't matter. In the end, we got there. We got there, and so it was hard, but it was, definitely in retrospect, looking back on it, it was one of the really key elements.
They did not push back.
But they liked it.
They actually, I think sometimes if parents are leading if children see parents wanting to do something, it was a want to, not a have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
We wanted to be in church.
When I was doing youth ministry, I would always say the students are never going to be more excited than the leader is.
Right.
If the leader
Right.
rolls his eyes or
Right.
kind of groans when we find out that we're going to go
Yes.
do 30 minutes of quiet time, you have no chance of those kids
Correct.
having a positive encounter with God. But if you, and not in a fake it till you make it kind of
No,
way,
we
but like in a
wanted that.
true, if church is an amazing place to be, then your kids will what is it, caught versus
yes,
taught?
Well, and they were so comfortable there that they were wild there that we remember when we used to have, so there's all different age groups at church and there's all different levels and floors, and they would be tearing around, and we would do skits on I'm holding a baby and I'm walking through the hall and you come and bump into me and the baby goes flying on the floor, but with a stuffed animal or an older person, just to show them you have a body and you have to learn how to
They were bumping into old people.
behave
and
in the hallway.
pregnant women. And
Like
they were.
But that shows how comfortable they felt in
They were.
that building.
They were absolutely comfortable, and then I would say, they're also the sort of going to church. I think was important when the kids started being like, church isn't cool. It's not, I don't have, my friends aren't really there. They're, like later on. This is I would say in the middle and high school times, it was still something that's like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is what we do as a family, and you're coming, and even if
Wait, did that really happen?
Sure, there were some bad attitudes here and there.
I don't remember. I
But it
felt
wasn't-
like they liked it.
They did. I think they did. She doesn't believe me.
The glass is shattered. My angels.
Okay, no, I know. Like they didn't always want to go to Wednesday night, or but I don't know. We'll have to ask them.
Yeah. Well, I think it's helpful, and I can anticipate this question coming from a young family. When you have so many kids and they are of a high energy variety, discipline is something that is really difficult. We are in a time where I would say the prevailing sort of new idea, the new ideology of parenting in regards to discipline is something called gentle parenting. And again, there's a million nuances here, so I'm going to paint a straw man, if you will, and I'm going to recognize and acknowledge it's a straw man. But gentle parenting sort of sits on the edge of, maybe I was disciplined as a child, and that left some emotional scars for me, some pain that I'm still dealing with here. And I want to make sure that my kids are never afraid of their parents, or my kids are never punished. And for some folks, I think this is a very thoughtful conclusion. For other folks, I think it centers more along, to discipline is not kind, it's not gracious. I think the Bible teaches an altogether different, as is often the case, the Bible teaches a third way, right? I don't put you in your place in punishment. I don't ignore your bad behavior. I do constructively discipline. But how did you all, were you guys kind of on the same page from day one with that? Was there a lot of figure it out together, or, it would be great, I think, to hear what was that like?
Okay, so I look back on our parenting, and the way, this is coming from my perspective, is that Doug went to work and I was at home, and it was my job to raise the children. And if I could have collaborated more and talked more and thought more, but we were too tired to we didn't have a plan. And so I'm looking at all my Christian mom friends, and they are doing this preparation for parenting EZO method. And I am ADD, I am undisciplined, I'm unstructured. I can't live inside of a structure. We never had a set anything because my brain doesn't work that way. And when I was told I needed to spank, because here it is in the Bible.
Right.
So I tried to spank, and I was hitting them. I was mad that they didn't respect me, that they didn't obey me, that they weren't doing what I told them to do. And so we had to set up a system where we had this sign with the house rules. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Anyway, Doug had to spank them when he got home from work. So we had to talk about what had happened, and then Daddy had to spank you. And the only thing that was an automatic spanking was Michael, number 4, was a biter because he didn't have any language, and he would bite.
That was his self-defense.
That was automatic spanking. But
automatic spanking.
So that's kind of what we did.
But I would say, first of all, I would say you recognize your own anger issue.
I had
right?
serious anger
I think that's very
issues.
important. That was sort of, we recognized that early on and said, this is not healthy or good. And so there were times, they were very infrequent, I would say, where there was spanking involved, but there were some. And the kids still remember, and I said, I'm doing this because I love you. And they would scream back. If you love me, you wouldn't do that.
Right. No, because as a kid, you're I remember my parents saying, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm like,
no, it doesn't.
What is the crap coming out of your mouth? This is impossible.
I think that if you're doing it out of who you are and not what you're told to be, performance is, even in your own home, because you love them and you want to do the right thing. The best thing we heard, Dr. Norris told us, rules without relationship breeds rebellion.
Yes.
Ooh,
and
really
just always remembering that our relationship with them is what matters more than anything.
Yeah. So I would say, we rarely spank. I think the discipline though is really important, and it's not about spanking.
And the
spanking
consequences.
that was one kind of thing, but there were consequences to actions, and early on it was time out or go into or removing from something fun, or not
Yes.
being able to go to see a movie or see a friend or whatever, like withholding. By the way, that works very well as teenagers too. One tidbit on that by teenagers. So think ahead on this one is we at times with our teenagers would say, "What do you think your punishment should be for this?" And they would come up with the way more stricter and harsher punishments. We're like, "Really? Okay.
No car for
we'll do
3
that."
weeks.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll take my phone away for a month, or like, whoa, like things that were, because I think they were convicted and knew they were. So that was just a little tidbit. But I do think like having consequences is loving. I think it's a very loving thing to do.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I think it. Because you're training them, okay? Your job, like the way I would present it sometimes to the boys, and I don't know if they listen or not when they were young, but it's my job to actually shepherd you and train you. I don't own you. I can't make you do things, but your brain is not fully developed, and you are not looking at things more mature, and we are more mature, and know better that your path. Very important we know better. Not that we know you're like what you should do, but we know better. And I think the reverse of that, which we've heard as our kids are getting married, is one of the things that they really valued was that when we wronged them, which we did way too many times, we would actually seek their forgiveness, even as like a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old, and then coming back, I'm saying, Daddy raised his voice, "I'm sorry, will you forgive me?" And then your 5-year-old's like, "Sure, Daddy, I'll forgive you."
Right.
Whatever. But that modeling that was actually, they remember that. They remember it because it just showed them that we don't have all the answers. We're sinful just like every human on the planet. And we are literally winging it, trying to figure out what it means to have a Christ-centered home. And so please forgive me for that. And they remember that as this sort of humility. Oh, my parents are not like, a king and queen over the castle. They are, just further ahead in life, and their job is to help, train me and shepherd me. And so getting those sort of messages across, I think it was not a like easy or straight line thing, but in retrospect, I think there was some wisdom in that.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I feel like that is a played out of the rules. What rules without relationship breed rebellion. Thinking about the passage in Ephesians 5 where, and this verse like kind of haunts me. It probably does to you too, Doug, is when it says, "Fathers, do not be harsh with your children." Like don't be so tough on your kids that you become an oppressor to them, that you drive them crazy, that they can't ever please you. And I mean, what a heavy thing to lay on a child. Like a father's almost manipulative anger. And to say, "Sorry, please forgive me," I think it breathes that gospel life that says, "Listen, I've been called, right? God has appointed me to be your father or your mother, and I am trying so hard to do that. And yes. I am failing daily.
Yes.
And yet my love for you, and my love for Jesus is compelling me to say, I didn't do well today.
Yes.
Would you please forgive me?"
Yeah.
Because if you can't ask for forgiveness, I think over time it becomes increasingly difficult for a child to ask forgiveness. I can't be in a relationship with someone who's perfect unless that person has perfect grace, and only God has that.
Yeah.
Thinking about it that way is, I can't come to my parents and say sorry 1,000 times if they've never done anything wrong. Because I'm just a screw up at that point. Well, now I have a new definition and a new identification for myself. I'm the failure. I might as well live into that, right? Yeah. And so I think that's really deep. Yeah. That's really deep.
Well, I think, and just this is a little off topic, but I think it's important because I was asked to be an elder at our church as a younger guy, and I was like, I'm not in control of my household. Like I looked at I'm like, the scripture is pretty clear. Like you need control. I'm like, I don't qualify. I don't qualify. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The grace of God. It is about leading your home in a gospel-centered way, not oh, I've got control as king of my home and head of household in that mode. So just again, sort of fast forwarding to people here that might read those passages, and when they maybe become up for an elder and they're like, oh, I don't qualify. No, it's the grace of God actually applies in that passage as well.
Rob's a pastor.
I am.
And he's got a lot of kids.
And it is not controlled.
He is not in control.
That's right. Spoken
it's
so
the
prophetically.
Grace of God. No, I want to say that I had the privilege of being a child in the home with the children while Doug was the kind, wise, loving, faithful father. You were never oppressive or controlling. We played a lot. Fun was first. It's sort of fun is first. But I think that is such a gift.
It is.
We were not
is.
trying to be.
I'm not sure that's in the Bible, but.
Well, it isn't, but we were not trying to be perfect.
Yes,
And faulting on me because I was new and immature. I was not, my goal was that we have fun together and we all like each other, not that we behave perfectly. So that was a gift.
But you would look at me and say,
I wanted him to be.
We need to do devotions. We need
Right.
to catechize our kids.
Right.
And we would try, and we
didn't.
would have
Well,
prayer
none of
time,
that
and it was so.
They didn't
hard.
like it.
Well, it was hard. I mean, we would start. We would do it for 10 days, and then whoosh, gone. Every Sunday we're going to do this. I mean, we must have tried 50 different things. I mean, literally, it was the only thing consistent was our inconsistency.
And church.
Yes.
No,
church was consistent.
I'm saying in that area of morning Bible study with the kids.
Prayer. We prayed every night.
We prayed every night. Yes.
It is. It's so hard. It's so hard. I mean, in our house, we have had times where we've gone through the New City Catechism, and you can see this. You can see the difference because our oldest could probably do the first 9 or 10 questions, and our second can do the first question, and it's just that sort of has teetered off. And what's come up instead? We've been singing more songs. Because that's about the capacity we have right now.
We did tons of music.
And sometimes, Kate and I we're singing a hymn out of the Trinity hymnal, and our oldest is please stop. And he's 4. He's just I don't want to hear this right now. I just want to play Hot Wheels. Is that too much to ask? Aww. And so you're man, I kind of get it. We're sort of being the nerdy Christian parents right now. But it is this journey of ebbing and flowing. And
the 1st to the 4th. So Jack was raised on all the silly little videos, like Salty. I'm a little praiser. I'm a hallelujah raiser. and he was
Bible Man.
all
Bible Man.
G, everything G rated.
Veggie Tales.
And by the time when Michael was 2 or 3, he was watching Star Wars.
Yeah,
and then
for
Lord
sure.
of the Rings soon after that.
He did.
At age 6.
It's important to start him young.
So it's interesting how we became weaker and weaker in what was allowed as the more we.
I would say the way I would put it is that the pressures of being different than the world got much tougher as they got older and got out into elementary and middle school and got on sports teams and. They all went to a secular middle and high school, and so as those pressures ratcheted up, there was more tension. And it was actually, I think, one of the healthiest things in retrospect now, mostly because they're all walking with the Lord and saw those days as really challenging and with the world and their faith, and they all kind of were transformed in college through beautiful Christian ministries and whatnot. Notice they weren't transformed in our home; they were transferred in college. Transformed in college, but I think the sort of the juxtaposition of failing under this roof
with grace and forgiveness,
with grace
and relationship,
and with the church and pastors' support was super helpful. Kato mentioned we went to boarding school. The natural thing would be what would your kids want to go to boarding school? And we thought about it, but said, why would we take them out of the youth program at our church? And around this place where they are at a secular school, seeing and experiencing a lot of the things of the world, participating in, frankly, a lot of the things of the world, and and failing there, and then when they got to college is when they actually transformed and absolutely haven't looked back, and it's been really beautiful. And that doesn't work for everyone. That's just, maybe this is how God planned it for us. I don't know, but there was some wisdom in sort of having them fail under our roof as opposed to send them off to college and, get on your knees, because you got to do that anyway. But that is scary. I mean, the college world is, you think 5-year-olds are scary.
Have you heard little people, little problems, big people, big problems?
I have.
Yeah.
I mean, there's truth to that, right?
Lots.
Yeah.
And it advances even beyond college, like, the roommate drama versus like, hey, my marriage is falling apart. Like those are life's problems do get bigger. They get bigger.
Yeah, that's can I just say one thing on that? Because I think that's a really important thing is when you have little kids, it's so easy to focus everything on the kids, and a lot of it is focused on the kids. But again, going back to the triangle, God needs to be number one, and your spouse needs to be number two, and your kids are number three. And we told our kids that. And we like
tell them my wife story.
So the story one time is like Jack was, I don't know, 5 or 6.
No, he
3?
was like 3.
Okay, 3
we
or
tried
4.
to practice this thing called couch time.
Yeah. So anyway, so he comes up. He is mouthing off to Kato, like just absolutely being very disrespectful. And I stand in front of Kato, and I'm like, "Don't you talk to my wife that way? Not your mom or her. It's my wife. Like identifying like this is the primary relationship in the home after God." My wife. And Jack just looked up at me and he just goes, "She's my wife." And I'm like, "No, she's my wife." He goes, "She's my wife. My wife." Like he was saying like, "She's my wife."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, she's your mom." Like, "No, she's my wife." Because he recognized that, but that was the funny joke about it. But actually having that be the primary relationship is super important, not just for your kids. It's really important for your kids to see, but it's actually really important for when your kids leave.
Right.
Really important. I mean, that's the relationship for the rest of your life. Your kids are your relationship for the rest of your life, but by the way, at 18, they go away, and your influence and sort of dominion over them or like shepherding of them diminishes. You're still their parent forever, but it's different. It's very different. And we're here in this house and we're alone, right?
Right.
And so having that relationship is really important. To not let
work on it.
Not let your relationship get dry.
So, Kato, what were some of the things that Doug did that made the biggest impact for you in that relationship?
He would invite me to go away with him. My mom, praise the Lord, would come and handle the insanity. But I trusted her enough, or other people, to come and be in this chaos, and we would go away together. Because we weren't great at doing the monthly date thing.
No, we weren't.
But we did always invest in our marriage and our relationship. And we actually are compatible, and we like to do things together. So like we both like to play golf. We both like to ski. So we enjoyed getting away and keeping our marriage.
And we did things like a 10th anniversary trip or a 20th anniversary trip, like stuff like that. But I would think those were great. But the more impactful ones, I think, this is another good tip. If your parents are wondering, hey, what should I get you to?
Oh yes.
Like we would say, how about a weekend away?
As a Christmas present?
As a Christmas present or something. And so we would go to, Middleburg or whatever. We went to a number of places, and those were just life-giving. Like after the Christmas holiday, you go away for 2 nights, and it was just the two of you, and it would those were really valuable things. So getting away, however you do it, but sometimes having your parents pay for it is really great.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Doug's mother would give that for us for Christmas, and then my mom would come and watch the kids.
Oh, tag team.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a really, and so making sure you're spending time with each other, it seems almost impossible, but it's really important.
And I will say, in the height of your 40s, when you're building your career and you have your children, you're building a family, and we were a one career family. But I remember crying and feeling like his job was the other woman.
Yeah.
So, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And we thought about quitting and going and moving to a boarding school and just living that idyllic life where he's a teacher and our children are around us all the time. And that's when somebody told you, God has you where you are. You serve him there. Yeah. And we just plodded forward. But I think...
But that was a little bit about not knowing what vocation and faith was about. Maybe it's a different podcast we should be on. But that was a really impactful thing for me because I became a Christian in the, I don't know, after 7 years in a career. And I was like, I can't be a Christian and do what I do. Like, how can I do that? And I struggled.
Because you felt guilty.
I felt guilty. I felt like I was away from my wife. I felt like it was very profit-oriented and not like it wasn't Christian. I was like, I don't know any Christians at all. Like zero. Now I know some. Not
right.
Not many, what I do. But this wise mentor of mine was like, he said this for maybe 3 or 4 years. He said, God has you there. Serve him there. Like, there's no accident.
Right.
Like, you're there. You're in private equity because you're a Christian. So serve God where you are. And I was like, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but I can't do that. And finally, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm here. And interestingly, my career actually took off at that point. Right around that point, because I finally was like committed to, oh, okay, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I can actually do that.
Right.
And I would encourage in any career, God wants us all from a vocational perspective in lots of different places.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that one of the things I pick up on a lot in conversations with young fathers is dad guilt. It's I feel a sense of guilt over the fact that I do have a job. In your, I'm about to be 33. A lot of us are in our mid to young 30s, grinding it out at work. You're past those first few years where you're just trying to figure it out. And now you're in the like, hey, it's time to climb the ladder,
Yes.
and my family, kind of depends on me maybe for that income. But, now we also see this even with like mom guilt. Like, I'm working because we need 2 incomes to live in Maryland because it's expensive. Like you can't buy a house for less than $500,000, it feels like. And so this sense of like, we're both grinding it out. Are we failing as parents because we're grinding it out? Am I failing as a dad because I'm working so much? And to sort of say, what I like to talk to people about, and this was so helpful the way you guys just said it, is that's actually for the 2 of you to figure out. That's for the 2 of you to sit down and talk and pray and let the Holy Spirit guide you. Because the second, it's way easier, let's say that. It's way easier to look to somebody else outside and say, well, should both parents be working? Who's to say? Who's to make that decision?
That's each individual couple.
That's each individual couple. And should a father be working 50 hours or 60 hours a week? That's for them. Let the Lord guide you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like through that mentor, he did guide you. And
I picked someone in our church that I looked up to that I just think, her kids went to the same school that our children went to, and and I still this week texted her because now I'm in a new season. Everything's a season. I'm now 2 more boys are getting married. I'm a mother-in-law 4 times. I'm an empty nester. I don't know who I am again. So, and I have someone that's ahead of me that I can call and talk to and pray with, and just she's probably prayed for our family more than I've prayed for our family, and I know that. And we do that was another thing. We do pray.
Yes.
But we're not consistently praying every day. But I pray Mom's in Prayer. I've done that since Jack was in kindergarten, and I still host it every Friday in our house. Wow. That is one thing I've done since Jack was in kindergarten, is pray with other mothers for our kids.
Praying mom.
I'm a praying mom. I'm not so much a praying wife.
Stop it.
Listen, it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, the best intentions, then life happens.
Well, also he feels like he's got it all figured out.
Look at him.
Which isn't true, but he does present that way, and I present as I don't have anything figured out. So together
somewhere in
Both
the
those
middle.
statements are not true. Both of them.
okay.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly. It took me a
There's a
second.
third way.
There's a third way. Well, guys, I'm just so blessed. Thank you for sharing your hearts and your life and some of your stories. Just maybe as we close here, Doug, why don't you speak to the young dads, and Kato, why don't you speak to the young moms, and just maybe share a word of encouragement or just a thought. It could be advice, or it could just be, I don't know. What would you say to a young dad, Doug?
I would just say, time, I think, is the thing that we've talked a lot about on this last hour or whatever. And I would focus on quality time with kids and with your wife. And quantity time is a nice to have sometimes. And I think so. I think that like making sure that you're present wherever you are is it's a skill that needs to be learned, and is really valuable. You need to be present at your work and not guilty about not being home. And you need to be present at home. You need to be present, in church. Like being present is a present. It's hard to do, but I think that quality time, I think it creates relationship and memories, and so to the dads out there, I mean, I would just encourage you to hang in there, know that this is a season of being really stretched, and the stretching now is of time, and the stretching in a few years when they're teenagers is going to be more emotional. And a little worry oriented for the big kids, big problems, because they're higher risks. That's what it is. They're just bigger risks. Things can happen that are more life changing than a poopy diaper, poopy pants, whatever. When you're 4, And so, but enjoy the ride. It's a roller coaster. It's not a straight line. There's no silver bullet. Keep in the word and keep on your knees and stay close to your wife.
Kato?
So I'm going to cry. Okay, so when you asked me what did he do for me, he was so present. When he would come home, it was a present. You're seriously such a good dad and a husband. And I was such a nag. And I would say, all I wanted was for the boys to love their father and to be like their dad. And I thought I knew so I thought I knew how to make all that happen. And they call him, they reach out to him, they play with him, they enjoy him, they love him. So what I wanted has happened. And I wish that I would have known that I didn't have to work so hard at trying to control everyone. Because I'm the woman with 5 men, and I'm trying to control everyone, but I can't go back. And for a woman, I think it's really important to be seen, known, and loved by another woman, like having a best friend that you can talk about all the stuff, and having someone that's a little bit ahead of you that can tell you it's going to be okay. If you don't have I didn't have a believing mother, but Doug's mother was always encouraging me and praying for me and cheering me on, because it's hard. It's hard. It's
hard, but it's full of joy. I mean, I look back and I just, at one point I said this crazy thing 4 years ago. You'll laugh at this. We have a fellows program here, and I was talking to the fellows about finances, and the one guy said, "How do you know when you have a kid?" And I said, "Well, it's a matter of faith. You never really know. You never have enough of money to say, oh, I can afford a kid, right? It's always a matter of faith." And I said, I kind of even now, I didn't back then, but now I was like, I kind of wish we had 5.
Right.
And there was 2 women there that had 5 kids. And I'm like, don't you guys wish you could have another? And they were in the middle of young single-digit kids, and they were like, no way.
Yeah, right. You're crazy.
I think later, I think it's,
I knew I was done.
Yeah.
They always say you'll know when you're done. I knew.
Yeah. Yep.
But I just want to say, pray. The Lord loves your children more than you do. He does.
True. And he loves your marriage, and he's for your marriage.
And he's for your marriage.
And your marriage is the most important thing in your home. besides loving Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for just being here with us and for chatting and, for your continued presence in my life. And just, I anticipate the blessing that comes from this conversation for others. So guys, listen, that's a wrap for this episode. There is, I think, one more episode this season, and it'll come out next week. So we'll hope to catch you there. Until then, this is Rob Gicking. If you want to reach out, if you ever want to talk, my email is in the show notes below. Would love to hear from you and pray for you and know how we can be a blessing. So until then, we'll see you next week.